Okay. Welcome to another episode of Connect and Politic, and we're here with a special guest. Please introduce yourself by telling us your name, where you're currently located, and your favorite snack.
Oh, that's easy. I'm Stacy Tarver, currently located in San Francisco, California, and my number one greatest of all time favorite snack is Oreos.
Any special kind of Oreos, or just the traditional one?
I like the traditionals are my favorite, but I like to try all the flavors. So I think what Oreo has done, Oreo marketing, I should say, in the past few years is brilliant. People line up for Oreo releases like they're sneakers now. So I'm a big fan of that.
So, do you also line up for Oreo releases,
I
or?
have I have I have been in a line or two
Oh
in New
wow,
York.
nice, nice, nice. All right. What would you say is your fondest memory from childhood?
Oh, that's a good question. Um, I was just telling someone about this the other day. There was a time that my parents uh, didn't give us any Christmas presents one Christmas. I don't know if it was because they were going through something or something they didn't want to tell us about.
Hmm.
But I remember we were like all excited, go downstairs, go to the Christmas tree, and there was nothing there, literally nothing. Like I think the gifts that came from like other family members they had like put away.
Uh,
Um, and then gave us each an index card that said, instead of gifts this year, we made a donation in each of your names to UNICEF. And it was like this whole big thing how they wanted to teach us a lesson, I guess. Um, I don't know. I don't know how you define fond, but that is one of the most memorable, obviously one of the most memorable Christmases that I've had, but I think one of the most memorable just like times of very very strong feelings about my family, and remember the conversation that we had afterwards and whatnot. And so
yeah.
I talk about that a lot. It's funny too because like that type of question has been coming up a lot right now just because we're in this whole like everyone's getting used to working in this new environment, so we're asking all these like weird questions that we wouldn't normally talk about at a meeting.
Uh,
But yeah, that
also,
one's on my mind.
you're having these type of discussions in the professional environment.
Yeah, oh yeah, which is crazy. Um, yeah.
Huh. We That's interesting. We'll talk about that later, actually. Um, so, how do you think your childhood has helped turn you into who you are today?
uh, Probably the biggest way is just watching my parents. I mean, I have somewhat of a non-traditional upbringing, I would say. My parents were both like extreme workaholics. My mom was an academic and was a PhD from Stanford, and back in that time there weren't that many women PhDs from Stanford, especially from the engineering school. So she was just like way into her career, and was on the road a lot, and uh, worked long hours. And my dad, shortly before I was born, left his cushy job at AT&T Bell Labs to start his own business, and worked out of our basement when I was young, and then later on became more successful and got an office and sold his business when I was in high school. um, and so kind of just watching both of them just completely 200% devoted to their careers, I think more than anything has shaped my approach to career, and in some ways learn what not to do from them too, that I reflect on now that I'm a bit older and married. But yeah, just watching them was, I think, learning by osmosis on how to have solid work ethic.
Good, good. What would you say some things in life, in your life, that you're not living you're not willing to live without? And it could be
Like things or
a thing, or a concept, or um, relationships, and any of it.
okay. I wouldn't be able to live without sport, and I say that as a fortunate person sitting here that I'm able-bodied and can still do sport. Now in my mid-30s. So of course I might say that today and then regret it 5 years from now. But yeah, I don't think I would be a very nice person if I couldn't go out for a run when I'm feeling stressed, or just go out and sweat out some steam. So
Okay.
I definitely need that.
And when you say sport, you're primarily referring to running, or?
Yeah, now fitness, running, even we live kind of near Twin Peaks in San Francisco. And so sometimes it feels like it's a super steep trail, probably 2.5 miles from, the city level up to Twin Peaks lookout in San Francisco. And sometimes it feels good to just like go out there and see how fast I can go up that hill. So yeah, sport in the past used to mean team sports, and most of my good friends and later colleagues, because I worked for Nike for a long time, I met somewhat adjacent to sport, or my life in sport. But now, yeah, it's really just sweat, going out and just getting a good sweat.
Good. And this might be a similar answer, but what's your favorite thing to do for self-care?
Oh yeah, definitely. So running is my favorite thing that I enjoy doing while I'm doing it. But yoga, I should do more. I don't enjoy doing it while it's happening as much as I enjoy going for a run. But afterwards, I always feel better. And I don't know if you remember this, but when I was in college, I had to have emergency surgery and was in the hospital for like basically a whole semester.
Yeah.
And after that, to build back I was taking these medicines that just like killed my bone density. So to build back my bone density, I started doing yoga. And when I went in for my monthly test, the doctor was just like, I've never seen someone's bone density at your age as an adult actually improve. Wow. And I think the only thing that I changed was yoga. So I should remember that and do it more. But yeah.
That's good. Yeah, I mean, yoga is one of those things that, at least for me, and for a lot of people that I speak to, always feel like they should do more of.
Yeah.
But for whatever reason, we haven't made that priority. And I think it's probably to what you just alluded to, which is that while doing it, for some of us, and it could be like, if we're coming from a sports background, since we're so active, when we're doing the sport, it's like there's a lot. There's that. It could be like a little disconnect. That you can achieve the same thing or attain the same thing in doing yoga, but it's just we haven't. At least for me, I haven't gotten as comfortable with that yet.
Yeah.
It's definitely I need to do more yoga. So.
Yeah, it's hard to. I mean, I haven't gotten into meditation. People have told me that I should do that too, but yoga, and I would assume the same for meditation, it's hard to just sit with no stimuli. So like, even when I go running, most times I'm not listening to like a podcast, or I actually made a rule for myself not to run and have podcasts on, because I think the multitasking, it just became more about the podcast than it was about the run. Right. But even if I go running outside and I'm, have no headphones in or anything, I still have the stimuli of the city and like people watching. And so, yeah, it still keeps my attention. Whereas yoga, it's just the time feels like it goes by so slow when you don't have when you
Exactly.
don't have stimuli coming in.
Yeah. Actually, I'm gonna remember that in another conversation that we have about the time going slow in workouts. Because I've started a new workout program that's more time based, and
Okay.
it's just, I mean, brutal is not even the right word, but anyway. Um, all right, so what would you say? Well, let us know. What do you do in your professional life, and how did you get to where you are?
Yeah, so now I work for a venture studio. It's called West. Um, it's a bit of a unique business model in that we're part brand studio and we do creative services work for mainly for startups, but sometimes for public companies as well, later stage companies too, but mainly for startups. And while we're doing work with them, we take a bit lower cash fees than a traditional like creative or marketing agency would take, because we also get paid partially in warrants, equity in the company, um, employee level equity that sits behind investors. And then we have a fund attached to that, about a $40 million fund, and we make selective investments on top of our work. So we're kind of doing due diligence while we're going throughout the creative process and helping to set up a brand foundation for startups, or set up their go to market strategy.
Mhm.
And then if we really like where we're headed and we believe in the work that we're doing, we put some extra skin in the game by investing in the company too. Um, and I've been doing that for only about 8 months now. Before that, I was working for Nike and was living in Shanghai, and moved to San Francisco because my husband got a job with Google. And so me coming to join West was mostly motivated by just looking for something full time in San Francisco. Because when I came back from China, I was commuting from San Francisco to Portland every week. And while I thought I was ready for remote work life, I was not. I would say the company was not either.
Yeah.
And so I ended up, you know, being in Portland, living in Portland Monday through Friday, and then just coming to San Francisco on the weekend. So
Yeah.
it wasn't ideal.
Got it. Got it. What would you say is one thing that you would love to learn but you haven't gotten to yet? And I know, and I know that you're a constant learner, like, most of the people that I speak to, and you're constantly tackling new things and tinkering. But what's one thing that you haven't gotten to yet?
Um, I'm half Chinese, and my grandmother was a Chinese professor at Wesleyan University in Connecticut, um, and emigrated here from China, and um, especially being over there and going to her. It's now her brother's house, but like essentially the house that her father bought when they were all in school in China, in Beijing, and just kind of like knowing that that's only 2 generations removed from me, but that I culturally just have I feel like I've dropped the ball on a lot of things, on just like just carrying lessons and knowledge forward. So that's one thing. I definitely made my best attempt to learn while I was there, just out of survival. Um, but I think a lot of the cultural lessons and the history lessons and things like that you would get through truly studying the language and the culture, I'm missing out on in a big way. And I read something last year that was saying, I forget who the author was, but he was essentially making the case that, everyone in our society is so worried about the legacy that they're going to leave. And, you do everything like thinking, oh, I'm going to be this person for posterity. And he was like, how many of those same people can actually name first and last name their 8 great grandparents?
I know.
And I was like,
That's crazy.
I don't think I don't know their names. Like that's, 3 generations away. I don't even know their names. So the case he was making was, how can you expect your great grandchildren to even know your name, let alone you left some legacy for them? Like, so I thought that really grabbed me. And then I kind of felt that way too, because I was living in Beijing and getting to see, relatives from that side of my family that were really like strangers to me until I actually went there. So, yeah, I want to spend more time and make more time to get more immersed in that side of my
Chinese culture.
Yeah.
Cool. What's one advice you would give your younger self?
Ooh. So I was just thinking about this through the lens of basketball. So Dawn Staley earlier, a few days ago, won AP Coach of the Year. So she's the first player, man or woman, to win Player of the Year and then Coach of the Year, which is pretty amazing. She's an amazing person. And I was thinking about her, and I was reminded of when I was like 16, 17, she came to give a pregame speech to my basketball team at some tournament in Philly. And I was just like, this person is like everything that I want to be when I grow up. And I used to go around telling people, I was going to be the first woman in the NBA, not the WNBA, but I was going to be the first woman in the NBA. And my dad would always tell me, like, because I was the type of person that would do 9 million things. Like, I was on every team and, was doing every activity. And I kind of wear my ambition on my sleeve in a lot of ways, even now, but especially then. And so my dad would always tell me, like, if you want to be a serious basketball player, like, you have to focus just on basketball. Like, the amount of time that someone like Dawn Staley is putting in versus you spending all that time doing gymnastics and playing soccer. He really didn't like that I played soccer.
Really?
And running track and
that's another conversation. But
yeah. Doing art and doing all the stuff you do. I don't know why you're messing around with that. If you say you want to play basketball, then play basketball.
Right.
And so I think I don't know that maybe this is just who I am, and I'm a master of all, or jack of all trades, master of none type person, and kind of enjoy being a generalist. But I do think if I was going to give my younger self advice, it would be to pick a lane and focus and figure out what are the must-haves versus the nice-to-haves, and just really focus on the must-haves in a bigger way.
Got it. What's the toughest thing you've had to tackle, and what helped you get through it?
That's well, there's one that I don't know that I am through it yet.
Okay.
And I have 2 big ones. So one is, I think, just growing up being half Black and half Chinese. I always had, like the classic mixed kid identity issues, not really knowing where I fit in, not ever really feeling like I belong in any one group or even in like certain family gatherings and stuff like that. So I think there's just an element of early onset imposter syndrome that comes with that. And I guess it wasn't until after college for me that I really just like realized that none of that matters. And if you truly want to have community or want to have a sense of belonging and don't feel like you're getting it, then you just have to make it for yourself. And so I started a run club at the Westside Y where I worked after college, and that became kind of like my crew and my like people that I belonged with. I even went and lived with one of the guys when I was like in between apartments. So it was just like the sense of belonging there was something that I hadn't felt before, but it was because I just took initiative and made it. And so now I think my lesson from that and how I want to deal with any sense of that feeling moving forward is just, if you're not getting it from wherever you need it, then you just need to make it yourself. Whether it's a book that you want to read, or something you want to listen to, or a piece of art that you feel like doesn't exist, or a message that's not out there, then that means you just need to make it yourself. The second one, though, is that when I was in college, I had that time that I spent a long time in the hospital, and I found out I had this disease called endometriosis. And I would say what I struggle with now, so endometriosis is the number one cause of infertility in women in the world. And most people, it's only like right now people are talking about it, but it's obviously been around for a long time. There's no known cause, no known cure. And the amount of money that's spent on it from a research standpoint, academic standpoint, is very little in comparison to things like, diabetes and cancer and things like that. And so, yes, while it's not a fatal disease, if you take into consideration that it's the number one cause of infertility in the world, it is, can be fatal in a different type of way. And it wasn't until college that I found out, when I was on the operating table, I found out that I had it. And I think what I still struggle with today is how to allow myself to have that be a part of my identity, and in that I want to do more speaking out about it and raise awareness for it, and let other women know, because it affects 1 in 10 women. Let other women know that they can talk about it too, and it doesn't have to be taboo, without letting it define me, if that makes sense. Like, I have this constant struggle between, I could have it way worse off in so many areas of my life than I do, and I have no right to complain about anything. And so I kind of go back and forth between how I could talk about it and still acknowledge how blessed I am, and how, and also how I don't want, to sound like someone who's let their adversity define them, because I don't want that to be what defines me.
Yeah. And so have you found a balance in being able to talk about it, or to advocate, about it, or, just bring general awareness, but still not have it define you, but still be at peace with knowing the possibility that, you may be one of those that are seriously affected by it?
I haven't yet. Yeah, so if you have any advice, I'll take it. I don't think I've found a good balance yet. I speak about it at times when I need to. Like, I recently had to go have, kind of like a follow-up procedure done, because my doctor thought that she had found a tumor. And so I had to fly back to New York. And so, there comes a time, like, in your career where you have to just like say to your colleagues, oh, I'm actually going for this. And, and those kind of conversations can get a little awkward sometimes. So I think as awkward as those conversations can be, just reminds me that I need to talk about it more.
Yeah, that's actually, I'll think about this more, and get back to you on this, or maybe we'll have a follow-up discussion about this. There's a couple of responses that you provided that I want to have follow-up discussions. They can always be their own thing, their own little thing. So we'll follow up on this one, how to, deal with, difficult um, situations that can almost define you if you're not, careful about, how you deal with them, and how you can grow from them, right? Like
Mhm. Mhm.
finding a path forward. So
Mhm.
I think that's something we can go deeper about. On a
Yeah.
lighter note,
There's
oh, go on.
Well, I was going to say there's a lot of writing, and I used to kind of get into this a bit more a few years ago, but there's a lot of writing on like victimhood and the need to get yourself out of the playing the victim mode.
Mhm.
And so I think it's kind of related to that. But yeah, it's hard for me. Even like Lena Dunham is probably the most biggest platform right now of someone who speaks constantly about endometriosis. And while I'm happy that she's doing it, I sometimes am like, I don't know, that's become her, like almost a part of her brand.
Yeah.
And I personally just don't know how I feel about that. Like she had a hysterectomy at a, relatively young age. And so, but she talks about it all the time. And
Yeah.
it's like, I don't know. It's definitely something that you feel every day. And um, so it's, well within the realm of acceptability that I think you would talk about it every day, but I don't know. I'm like conflicted about that now becoming a part of her brand.
Yeah. Okay. Um, yes, I mean we'll definitely have a follow up on a couple of these, and that's a definite one. If you so on a lighter note, and this might be the last question, just given time.
Okay.
But if you won the lottery tomorrow, who would be who are some of the people that you would want to give some money to?
Oh, so I I guess it depends on the size of the check. Uh,
Let's
I
say,
would wanna, I would wanna. I'm a big believer in supporting the communities that have supported me. Just I would want to give back. I basically grew up in a YMCA, and so even when I was, after college, that's where I turned to for work. I graduated during the recession, um, and it felt like that was home in a weird way. And so I'd wanna make sure that if it's not the YMCA as you and I know it, that it's some future incarnation of what the YMCA I think provided critically to so many people. And I think about this a lot, but I actually feel like community centers like that are more needed than ever, but they seem to be disappearing, or you know, they're not as fixed within our culture or in our society the way the Y used to be. Um, so I would want to make sure that there's room for that, and that there's, you know, that those organizations have the resources they need to thrive. Um, I'd want to give money towards endometriosis research, um, just because, yeah, no one does. Um, and I'd probably want to figure out how to, I don't know if any amount of money in the world can fix this, but how to somewhat address the economic divide that this current situation seems to be underscoring in a really big way.
Yeah. Good, good. All right. Well, we connected, we politic, and we will definitely do this again in the near future. So I'm
Yeah.
gonna end the recording, and then um, let's see.